we have been involved in the mitzvah of Sefiras haOmer, counting the haOmer. Now, on a simple level, the straightforward level, to count. So for the past 31 days, we have been involved in the mitzvah of Sefiras. So the Mefarshim and the commentators suggest many additional reasons why we count the haOmer. Now, the haOmer count is a mitzvah associated with Gram. It's a positive time-bound mitzvah. So women are exempt from this mitzvah. However, women in many communities have taken on Sefiras haOmer, counting the haOmer, as an obligatory mitzvah similar to the mitzvah of shofar, and therefore it is practiced of many women to count Sefiras haOmer. One of the approaches I'd like to share tonight about the counting of the haOmer and what it represents and reflects, as the haOmer starts on the second day of Pesach and it continues until the day before Shavuos. And the timing of this count is not coincidental. So I was able to hear a shir from my Rabbi Meir Yehuda Kadovitz, Yeshiva Gadol of the Five Towns, what he said to the Bachram of his shir at the beginning of this man, and that was a very, very appropriate message for us to all hear about Sefiras haOmer. We'll begin by going a little bit away from the present time period, and we'll talk about a story in Parshas Bereshis. And then we'll tie it back into how it relates. It brings out the main theme of Sefiras haOmer, counting the haOmer, what it represents. So in Parshas Vayetze is full of different interactions between Yaakov and his wives, trying to get married, working for Lavan, and eventually having children. So towards the beginning, in the beginning of the third Aliyah, so at this point in the story, Yaakov was promised by Lavan that he would be able to marry Rachel, but he would have to wait 7 years. Pasuk says, "Vayavod Yaakov Rachel sheva shanim," and Yaakov worked for Rachel 7 years. V'yuve'enav yamim achadim, and this time period of 7 years was in Yaakov's eyes like yamim achadim be'avasa oso, through his ava, through his love for Rachel. And Targum Onkelos says, Yamim achadim is kiyom zeirin, like a few short days. So Rabbi Koller asks a question that many Mefarshim ask, a very, very obvious question, which is that if the whole reason was Yaakov's great love for Rachel, then how could the 7-year wait period seem to be a few short days? My Rabbi Kadovitz, he said a mashal to the Bachram. He said, if a Bachar was told that he found his kala, found his bride, but he would have to wait 7 years in order to marry her, it's very likely that 7-year wait would not feel like a few short days, rather it would feel like an eternity. So therefore, Rabbi Koller asks, how could Yaakov's 7-year wait for Rachel be like a few short days, like Targum Onkelos says? And Rabbi Koller answers that Yaakov Avinu, the whole premise of the question is really erroneous, because Yaakov Avinu didn't view the 7-year period as a wait and stalling and just a holding period until after 7 years he was finally able to marry Rachel. Rather, Yaakov viewed that each and every day of the 7 years he was building himself in a significant way, whether he was able to realize it or not, through his work with Lavan and through his personal development, that thereby, at the end of the 7 years, he would be able to, in conjunction with Rachel, be able to build some of the Shiftei Ka, the tribes of Israel, and be able to build Klal Yisrael from that point. And because the eternity and the perpetuity of Klal Yisrael would extend so long, so many years, so many thousands of years, that in comparison, the 7 years that Yaakov was building himself up was like a very short time period. And Rav Shimshon David Pincus from Eretz Yisrael, who was saying over this idea from Rav Aaron Kotler, he gave a mashal. We'll use it for more 26 monetary terms that say, so the way that it was suggested in the question that Yaakov Avinu was just like waiting for 7 years and then he would marry Rachel, that would be like, for example, if a person was told that in 100 days they would receive a lump sum of $10 million. So if that would be true, then for the next 100 days, a person would just count down the time until he finally got his lump sum of $10 million in 100 days. The middle period of the middle 100 days would just be a waiting and a holding period until he finally got the great end reward. Whereas the approach that Yaakov Avinu actually took, that he believed he was gaining so much each and every day and building and growing, was actually more like that Yaakov Avinu, in a slightly different arrangement, is that, say, a person would be told they would be given $10 million, but instead of being given a lump sum of $10 million at the end of 100 days, rather imagine that he received a $100,000 payment every day for the next 100 days. So therefore, after receiving $100,000 every day, he finally, at the end of 100 days, was in his bank account, had $10 million. So with that second approach is like what Yaakov Avinu really believed, which is that he was growing so much every day, and that every day he was gaining so much, like another $100,000, and then finally, at the end of, in his case, the end of the 7-year period when he was able to marry Rachel, then Yaakov Avinu had truly amassed his $10 million. He'd be able to marry Rachel and be able to build the tribes of Yosef and Binyamin and help build Klal Yisrael. Now this is, with this theme of Shimshon David Pincus applied to Sefiras haOmer. A famous question that many Mefarshim, including the Sefer Chinuch, asks is the counting of the Omer is not a regular count. It's not a count that we would imagine. Meaning, for example, in the situation that, like Rabbi Kadowitz said, a person is counting down the days to his wedding. Say 14 days left, 13 days left. So he counts from the number of days he is away down to 1 or 0. Counting down. Only 14 days left, only 13 days left, 12 days left. Whereas the counting of Sefiras haOmer is the opposite from that. Because the counting of the Omer starts at 1 day, the second day of Pesach, that's 1 day, and then builds up 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, now we're at 31 days. So it's a little bit odd that why exactly are we counting up the days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? If the end of the count is the 49th day and the day after is Shavuos, so seemingly there's some sort of a count towards Shavuos. So how come we're counting up rather than counting down? If the day of Kabbalas Torah is, and which it is, it's such a, like the Sefer Chinuch speaks out, is such an amazing day that we receive the Torah. Like the Rosh Kol in Boston, Rabbi Naftali Beer says that the Torah is our guidebook to life. For counting the days to receive the guidebook to life, which shows us how to act, how to live with Hashem in each and every situation. And we think we would count down the days. Only 18 days left, only 17 days left, only 16 days left. So what's the reason instead that we're counting up? Now today is the 31st day, and tomorrow will be the 32nd, and tonight will be the 32nd, and the day after will be the 33rd. So Rav Pincus answered with this idea we spoke about from Aaron Kotler about Yaakov, that really it's actually not an accurate perception to say that we're just counting down the days until the great day of Shavuos arrives and we receive the Torah. Rather, we're building ourselves in a tremendous way. We have the opportunity to build ourselves in a tremendous way through Sefiras haOmer, through the time period between Pesach and Shavuos, building up each and every day, little by little, and then at the end of the count, when we come to Shavuos, we'll be ready to receive the Torah in a proper way. In this way, Sefiras haOmer is not like the example that we're just waiting 49 days, or waiting, in the earlier example, 100 days, until we got the lump sum payment of $10 million. Rather, it's more like that we're gaining $100,000 every day through our avoda and what we're working on and building ourselves in Sefiras haOmer in the time period of the counting of the Omer and this time period, and that at the end, when we come to Shavuos, we'll have the $10 million, having accrued $100,000 every day for so to speak, for the 49 days or for the 100 days, for the 49 days of Sefiras haOmer, we will accrued and built ourselves each and every day, just like Yaakov Avinu built himself every day that he was waiting and that he was preparing himself to get married to Rachel and build Klal Yisrael. Now, I'd like to tell an amazing story that relates exactly to this theme that I saw on the Sefer I'm learning with one of my chavrusos from Yeshiva, Meir Miller, the Menucha principle, which is recommended to me by Rabbi Braun, Manal or Smeach Muncie. So in this story, there was a young man, seemingly maybe in either older middle school or high school, named Chaim, who was learning by a Rebbe in Yeshiva Derech Isan Far Rockaway, named Rabbi Avram Klein Kaufman. This story happened probably somewhere around 30 years ago, the beginning part of the story. So Rabbi Klein Kaufman was learning Mesachas Gittin with his Talmidim, with the students. And on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, the bottom Tosfos, Rabbi Klein Kaufman assessed was a very difficult Tosfos. But he decided to teach it to his students because he felt that with a significant amount of effort, some of the students would be able to understand the Tosfos. Now, Chaim was one of those students who put forth a lot of effort, and he tried his best to understand the concepts in the Tosfos. However, by the end of the shir, when the shir moved on from that Tosfos, Chaim unfortunately did not understand the Tosfos. Then, throughout the rest of the year, maybe when a similar topic came up, Chaim would try to reattempt that Tosfos, and he discussed it with his Rebbe a number of times. Unfortunately, by year's end, Chaim still did not understand the Tosfos. So Chaim eventually moved on out of Rabbi Klein Kaufman's shir, moved on in his learning career. He eventually learned in other yeshivas, learned in Kollel. Then later on, he split his time between learning in Kollel and working. And at one point, many years later, this was a full 20 years after Chaim had learned in Rabbi Klein Kaufman's shir, Rabbi Klein Kaufman got a call from Eretz Yisrael. And the person on the other line said it was Chaim. And Chaim said, if Rebbe is in Eretz Yisrael this Shabbos, I would like to invite Rebbe to a Kiddush I'm making. So Rabbi Klein Kaufman said, Mazel Tov, what is the occasion of the Kiddush? And Chaim answered, he told his Rebbe over the phone, he said, the reason why I'm making the Kiddush is because I finally chap the Tosfos. I finally understood what Tosfos is saying. And Rebbe knew that it was that Tosfos, Beis Amud Aleph at the bottom, that was the Tosfos that Chaim finally understood after 20 years, and therefore he was making a Kiddush to celebrate in Eretz Yisrael, where he lived. Now, to talk about this story a little bit, so the reason why Chaim was making the Kiddush is not simply because he, one day in the Beis Medrash in Eretz Yisrael, he opened up his Gemara, learned the Tosfos, and understood it. That wasn't why he was making the Kiddush. He was making the Kiddush because he realized how much he steiged and grew as a Ben Torah over the past 20 years, having come from the place when he was a Bachar in America, in Far Rockaway, when he was not able to understand the Tosfos, how he approached the Tosfos at different stages throughout his learning career, even when he was learning in other yeshivas and kollel, and different times he attempted and he was not able to understand the Tosfos. And now, finally, after 20 years, he did understand the Tosfos. Chaim was appreciating how much he grew and developed over the course of the 20 years to the point where now he can finally understand this difficult Tosfos, something he was not able to do earlier on. At this point, Chaim realized how much he grew and developed for the past 20 years. Not that at the time he sat down and learned 20 years later he gained a tremendous leap, but that he was continually building himself greater and greater every time he learned, every year that he was in Zman, in Kollel, in Yeshiva, that he learned and building himself as a person. And at the end of 20 years, he was celebrating this slow but steady growth, which finally culminated, and he realized this growth when he finally chapped, when he understood this Tosfos. So therefore, the Kiddush was not just about the understanding of the Tosfos, it was about the development and growth, the slow but steady growth that he had accrued over the past 20 years. Just like when Yaakov Avinu, Ron was saying, when he got married to Rachel, he realized, and he even realized this beforehand, but when he got married also, he realized all the strides and the gains he made over the past 7 years. And this is a similar way that we ourselves can grow and gain when, Be'ez Hashem, when we reach Shavuos, we're on day 31, and I'm sure we've all made strides each in our own way for the first 31 days of the haOmer, and hopefully we'll continue to do so over the next 17, 18 days. And then hopefully by Shavuos we'll be able to look back and see how much we steiged and we grew each in our own way over the course of Sefiras haOmer in a way that we'll be able to makabel and receive the Torah properly on Shavuos. And this idea is an important idea not only in Torah learning and in Sefiras haOmer, but it also has this has application as other aspects of our avodas Hashem as well. For example, if a person is in shidduchim trying to get married, so you might think that, oh, right now I'm kind of biding time, or whenever I get married, that would be like the $10 million jackpot. But for now, it would have been better if I would just be married now anyways, and it would be better if this time period were just gone, like getting rid of the time between now and me receiving my prize. Rather, what we gain from this idea from Pinkus is that really a person should view that whatever life situation he's in, as long as he's doing the Ratzon Hashem, he's doing what Hashem wants, and he's guided by his Rebbeim and Das Torah, that really every day he's building and gaining so much. And without the growth and development that the person is going through right now, even though it may seem to be a holding period, but that growth and development is enabling that person to be able to, when finally the end result comes, will be able to receive it and make the most of that gift and that opportunity. And another way that this comes about is when a person's looking for work. So a person could think, oh, it would be better if I was just employed already. What I'm doing now is just a holding pattern between now and my job. But if we can apply this principle from Pinkus, really, if a person realizes that every day and throughout my work, as if I'm working, I'll keep the Torah, and I'm working honestly and putting forth my best foot forward, and I'm committed that I'll use the money earned for mitzvahs, and I'm committed I'll make a Kiddush Hashem in the workplace. So the whole time that a person's looking for work doesn't have to be that, oh, I'm just holding in the holding pattern until I finally get the job. So rather, I'm building myself each and every day in a great way, so that eventually when I do find the employment, I'll be able to be successful in that position as Hashem. Mar Yeshiva, Moshe Zev Katzenstein, Yeshiva Gedol of the Five Towns, he told the Bachram recently, he said, valuing each day is an important part in preparation of Kabbalas Torah. That to value each and every day is an important part in preparation for our receiving the Torah on Shavuos. And we can see this from the third bracha of Shemona Esrei, where we say, Ata kadosh v'shemcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalucha salah. This is a very esoteric bracha. It mentions the holiness of Hashem and how the u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahalucha salah, that the holy ones every day will praise Hashem in an everlasting way. So there are different Mefarshim speak about this bracha. One idea I'd like to say is that U'Kedoshim B'chol Yom means the holy ones every day. Now, we might think that really there are like certain times that it's important to be holy. For example, Shabbos, where we have the 39 malachas that we refrain from doing, and that makes Shabbos a holy day. And we have Shavuos coming up, where we receive the Torah, we hear the Ten Commandments. And however, we might think that some days are maybe don't take on such importance. Maybe like Shabbos is important, but what about Motzi Shabbos? Maybe Motzi Shabbos not as important. Now, of course, it is true that there's no Isser Malacha, there's no prohibition of work on Motzi Shabbos, at least certainly after a person's had Malacha Malka or Bein Havdalah. But there's a way to be kadosh on Shabbos by not doing the 39 malachas, and by having the festive meals, by davening, having a rarefied conversation on Shabbos. But there's also a way to be kadoshim, to be holy on Motzi Shabbos. Motzi Shabbos itself has its own avoda, its own purpose that we can accomplish and grow from. Very different than Shabbos, and very different than Erev Shabbos, when we were getting ready and preparing the Shabbos meals and getting ready for Shabbos. But U'Kedoshim B'chol Yom tells us that the way to praise Hashem in an everlasting way is to be kadosh, to be holy each and every day, not only on the high water days of Shabbos, of Shavuos, on the yurtzeit of a person's parent, at a bris milah, but every day a person can gain from. I'd like to tell a recent story from my experience in Muncie for Pesach, of a family that was able to be Mekayim and carry out this exact idea. So I wanted to go to Muncie for the first days of Pesach, and I called one of the families who I knew, the Wheel Catch family from Muncie, and Markshan, they agreed to open their home to me for the first night Seder. And Mr. Wilcatch and I were on the phone talking about like what kind of wine I liked, and they got me the wine I like to drink for the Seder, and they made me feel very much like a Ben Chorin, and they sat me near the head of the table and treated me very royally, and asked me to say Divrei Torah at the Seder. And with that, the Wheel Catches they fulfilled the special mitzvah of welcoming the guests on the first night of Seder. Then I didn't have any of the rest of the meals, Yontif and Shabbos, with the Wheel Catches, but then Motzi Shabbos, the second night of Chol Hamoed, I called up Wheel Catches at home, and I said that because I was staying by someone that was away for Yontif, so they didn't really have any food at home. So I asked if I could come, if they would have anything that I could have, like leftovers from Yontif, for example, and the Wheel Catches served me a nice meal from the food that was left from the Yontif meals, and they had me over. And what struck me is just the difference between the two experiences. The first night Seder was with all the pomp and circumstance and the finely set table and the Seder plate and everyone there and the families, everyone all gathered together, and the whole saying of the Haggadah and the songs. And on the other hand, the Motzi Shabbos, the second night Chol Hamoed meal was very much simpler circumstances. It was the food was delicious, but there wasn't the whole setup of the table like for the Seder, and there wasn't a whole procession and a whole event. I enjoyed the Chol Hamoed meal, and it was a quieter experience. So, what I want to bring from here is that the wool catchers were able to fulfill Ukedoshim B'chol Yom, to be holy on the first night of Seder by having me for the Seder in a royal way, and they were also Mekayim Ukedoshim B'chol Yom by having me over for the quiet Motzi Shabbos Chol Hamoed meal, so that I would be, and they fulfilled the mitzvah of welcoming the guests even under less pomp and circumstance, but each situation in the way that it was fit for the right time and place. Now, a natural place that we look around this time of year to avoid it to work on is we look at the reason why we have on the dual aspect we're counting up to Shavuos, and the other aspect we're in Avelis, we're mourning the loss of Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim. The Gemara says, Shnayim Eser Aleph Zugim Talmidim Hayu Lo Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of Talmidim, which equals 24,000. We give us ad Antiparis, and they ranged in where they came from two regions, one called Givas, one called Antiparis. They are between those two places. And they all died at one time period. Because they did not accord proper kavod zelazet one to another. So the Mefarshim are all busy trying to understand what does it mean they did not accord each other proper respect. So Rabbi Nissen Dov Miller used to be the Rav of Eitz Chaim Sharon. He said from his Rebbeim that it means, for example, that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, instead of calling each other, for example, like Reb Yankel, they would just say Yankel. That very slight addition of respect, that by calling them Reb Yankel, to call them with some sort of a prefix of a respectful prefix, the fact that they omitted that and just called them by their name Yankel, that itself, that was a slight shortfalling in respect that was due to their fellow esteemed colleagues, and therefore so the big question is, how come they had such a hard punishment, the fact that they died? So many Mefarshim, including Brian Cutler, say the reason why they died is because they had a very, very special role of transmitting the Torah to the next generation and for perpetuity, and because they were at such a critical point in history, and they had this shortcoming, albeit small, therefore they died, and therefore B'haya Olam Shamim Ad Shabar Rabbi Akiva Itzar Rabosenu Shabidarm Mishnalahem Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Ve'hein heim hamidu Torah. And then Rabbi Akiva found 5 new Talmidim, and he was able, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai being one of them, and they were able to overcome whatever small shortcoming that the previous Talmidim had. They were able to be complete in this area of Nagu Kavod Zelazev, giving each other proper respect, and therefore they were able to uphold the Torah for future generations and until today. And the Maharsha, he has a comment on this Gemara. Maharsha says, "Ipnei shelo nagu kavod zelazeh, v'lo chash kol echad mehem al kavod Torah shel chaveiro, dein kavod al Torah, l'kach meisa b'mida zu ki chayecha, v'amru shemeisa b'misas askara de'efshar kol echad diber lashon hara." The Maharsha says that it's possible that, and he understands based on the way the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva Talmidim died with a plague called askara, a throat disease. So that's related to lashon hara. So that it's possible that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva spoke lashon hara about each other. So when I spoke to Rabbi Naftali Bir, Boston Rosh Kol, about this, he says what the Maharsha means is that they spoke what's called avak lashon hara, very, very minute possible statements, or maybe with hints or slight remez of some sort of negativity about their friends. Doesn't mean they were going out and out speaking like rampant lashon hara about their friends. It means that on their level, the speech that they had was not quite with the proper degree of sensitivity, and there may have been a slight tinge of negativity when they spoke about their colleagues and friends. But the Maharsha is saying that the way they died was a way that's related in the Gemara to speaking of lashon hara. So we were saying that the lashon hara they spoke was a very slight, like a vak lashon hara, a slight degree of lack of sensitivity to their fellow talmidim. On the topic of lo noku kavod zel hazeh, that they did not accord each other proper honor, many Mefarshim speak about that. Like there's a famous verse from Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that the Torah is expecting a person to love his friend like himself. So that implies that he loves himself. And if a person is suffering from sort of low self-esteem or low self-image, then because he doesn't love himself, he's not able to therefore give out proper love to his fellow Yidden in a proper way. Now, the Rebbeim basically speak about, the way I understand, three reasons for a person to feel self-worthy. One is for, as he's spoken about in the past, one is for every person, Jew or non-Jew, because they're created with Tselem Elokim. This is what the Rosh Kol and Boston Rebbe Naftali Beer speaks about, that every person is created with Tselem Elokim, in the image of Hashem. Therefore, each person can feel self-worthy. Then there's, for a Yid, for a Jewish person, there's the fact that we have an neshama, chelek elokam mimal mamish, which is a portion from Hashem is inside of us, and we're carrying around that $10 million prize. So therefore, we can feel good about ourselves regardless of our maisim and our mitzvahs. Even before we do mitzvahs, we feel we're carrying around this neshama, and therefore we feel good about ourselves. And third level is, like Rabbi Kanstein speaks about, a person's a ben Torah, an erlich yid, a person who knows the Torah, carries out the Torah, gives Hashem nachas with what they do. And for being a person who represents and carries the Torah, that's an additional reason to feel chashiv and to feel self-important and self-worthy. So if a person can acquire and work on, and all three of these can fit together, the Tselem Elokim, having a neshama, and being a person of the Torah, and if a person feels good about himself on all three levels, then Be'ez Hashem will be able to mekayim V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love his fellow Jew like himself, and to do what we can to fill in the slight slight shortcoming of Rabbi Kiva's Talmidim this time of year that we work on. Now, in the parsha yesterday, what we read, Parshas Emor, my mother's Bas Mitzvah parsha. So we learned a very shver parsha, a parsha that's very difficult to understand and relate to, which is the parsha of the Kohanim who are psulim, who had some sort of a blemish, like one arm was longer than the other, or a flat nose, or cataracts in the eye. So these Kohanim, even though they're bona fide Kohanim, they know their lineage from Aaron HaKohen, and they have tremendous avas Hashem and love and they want to serve Hashem the best way possible. And at the end of the day, the Torah says that someone with these blemishes is not allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. So how does a person feel? Shlomo Lindenbaum, Boston Kol, he speaks about this, and he says, must be like a person must feel so down. Here he is. He's like so close to being able to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and then because some deformity, he's not able to serve. And the reason why a Kohen with a mum does not serve is because when the Jewish person comes to bring the karban, and it's a major time of tshuva that he does, and he thinks about how the animal is being brought in the mizbeach, and if he's distracted by this different configuration of the kohen, it's going to throw him off. He's not going to be able to do the proper tshuva, and the whole trip he made from his hometown, and all the money he spent on the carbon is going to be for naught. So therefore, a kohen with a blemish is not able to serve. So Rabbi Lindenbaum brings from the Mashgiach, Shlomo Volba, who's also Rabbi Katzen's Rebbe, who says that really even more important than serving in the Beis HaMikdash is fulfilling Ratzon Hashem, is doing what Hashem wants. And if Hashem wants for that select person who's a Kohen, who's whole, to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, so that for him he could serve in the Beis HaMikdash, and that's what he should do. But for a person who is either not a Kohen or a Kohen but has a mum, so for him, the main thing he has to do is to fulfill the Ratzon Hashem, to do what Hashem wants of him. So if a Kohen who's a Baal Mum recognizes that I'm in the situation that Hashem wants me to be, that Hashem designed me this way, and this is the situation Hashem wants me to be, then he can serve Hashem simcha, doing his present avoda. He doesn't need to be, and he shouldn't be serving in the Beis HaMikdash. Rav Volbe is teaching that a person, each in his own situation, if he truly believes that what he's doing with his own kochos and talents and abilities is serving Hashem, then he can do so b'simcha, even if he may not have the most august or the most special role or the most coveted role. But as long as he's doing what Hashem wants of him, then he can do it, and he can do it b'simcha. And this is a great lesson for us to be able to take, to feel that and to overcome whatever any slight negative feelings may come towards another person, maybe has a more public role, a more seemingly a special role, that as long as I'm doing what Hashem wants me to do, that's the main thing, and I can do it b'simcha, with joy. Now I'd like to talk about some of the halachos of Sefiras haOmer. So we're familiar that we count the Omer for men and for women who have the minhag to count the Omer at night. And if one does not count at night, it can count during the day without a bracha. And if one goes an entire day without counting, then they count in the future without a bracha. So the question is, what is the reason for these different practices? Sometimes we count with a bracha, sometimes we count without a bracha, sometimes we don't count at all. So the reason is that because there's a machlokas, there's a dispute about Sefiras haOmer concerning what happens if a person missed a full day. So some say that if a full day is missed, then the mitzvah is over, because it's really like one long mitzvah with 49 parts, and if one part of the mitzvah is missing, then the whole mitzvah falls away. So therefore, if a person missed a full day, they should not count at all for the rest of the Omer. And the other opinion holds that no, it's 49 individual mitzvahs, and if one mitzvah is missed, you can still fulfill the other mitzvahs. So if a person didn't count day 30, they can still count day 31. So therefore, to make a middle approach, so in case really a person should be counting if he missed a full day, then we count. But in case when a full day is missed, we should not be counting anymore, so we omit the bracha, because we don't want to say Hashem's name if it might not be required. So therefore, that's the approach, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. Imshach levarach me'echad me'yamim, in Siman Taf Pei Tes Sefiras. Imshach levarach me'echad me'yamim, bein yom rishon bein shar yamim. So for b'shar yamim below bracha. If a full day is missed, we count the rest of the days without a bracha. Avalim hu mesupik in dileg yom echad below safar. But what about another case? Say a person, he went a full day, say the 30th day of the Omer, and he's not sure if he counted on the 30th day. So Shulchan Aruch says Yisbor B'Shar Yamim B'Bracha. He counts the rest of the days with a bracha. So the question the Mishnah Berurah deals with is, what's the difference in the two cases? First case is he counted. First case is he knows that he missed an entire day, and the result is he should count without a bracha. Second case is he went a whole day. He's not sure if he counted, so he counts with a bracha. So the Mishnah Berurah answers this. It's called a sex feka. There's two layers of doubt. First possibility is maybe this person actually counted on the 30th day. And if they counted, then definitely they should count with a bracha on future days. And even if they didn't count, then there's a possibility that maybe the halacha is that someone who doesn't count for a full day of Sefiras haOmer should, yes, continue counting with a bracha in future days. Since in the majority of these possibilities, 3 out of 4, are incline a person to yes count with a bracha, therefore the halacha is that a person who went a full day and is not sure if they counted, he should count in the future with a bracha and continue counting Sefiras haOmer. Another case that happened for me this year is 2 weeks ago, 2 Motzi Shabbosim ago, which is 8 days ago. I didn't count the Omer at night, and then Sunday I didn't count the Omer during the day, but I was in shul for Mincha Mariv on Sunday, and I heard Rabbi Chesed Young Israel counting the next day. I believe this was the 24th. I heard him count. I didn't count the 23rd. So when he counted the 24th, it was about 15 minutes past Shkia, past sunset, and I counted the 23rd day without a bracha. The question is, am I allowed to count future days with a bracha? So, at first glance, this would seem to be a case of a question, because between Shkia and Tzeis HaKochavim, sunset and sundown, it's a suffix. We're not sure if is it the previous day or is it the next night already. So one might think that some of the principles that we spoke about should apply based on different layers of doubt. But when Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, the Rosh Yeshiva of Philadelphia, answered this question in his Sefer Kobei Tzalachos, he says really what the proper approach should be is to look more closely at what part of Bein Hashmashos did this counting happen. Did it happen more towards the earlier part, like a little bit after sunset, or did it happen more in the later part, more towards sundown, more towards Tzeis? And Shmuel holds that if the person would count until about 19 minutes after sunset, then for this purpose, Sefiras haOmer, it could be considered like he counted during the day, and therefore you can count at night with a bracha. However, if it would be in the later part of Tzeis HaKochavim, in the later part of Bein Hashmashos, towards sundown, towards Tzeis HaKochavim, then at that point it should be regarded as like if it's night, and like you missed the full day, and like the Shulchan Aruch says, if a person missed the full day, he should count without a bracha in the future. So that would be the proper approach, that night he should count without a bracha. As we count up towards Shavuos, Rabbi Kadmon is also quoted from the Sefer Chinuch in Simin Shin Vav on the mitzvah of Sefiras haOmer, who explains the reason for the mitzvah. So Chinuch says, Mishrashi mitzvah al tzad pshat, v'shechol ikron shel Yisrael inu ela Torah. The whole essence of the Jewish people is the Torah. U'mipnei Torah nivru shamayim ve'eretz v'Yisrael. And because of the Torah, the heaven and the earth were created. V'hiya ikar v'asiba sheniglu v'yatzu mitzrayim kedei she'yikabu Torah b'sinai v'kaimua. And the main reason why we were taken out of Mitzrayim, where we left Egypt, is so that we should receive the Torah and fulfill it. Therefore, we're obligated to count every day from the second day of Pesach until the day we receive the Torah. laharos benafshenu, to display to ourselves, hachefetz hagadol, the tremendous desire, al hayom hanichbad, the tremendous desire to the honorable day of Shavuos, hanichsach libenu, and that we're yearning so much for the day of Kabbalas Torah. And indeed, this is what Rav Chaim Mintz, Mashgiach of Staten Island, says is the main perspective we should have during this time period of Sefiras haOmer. It's true we keep the minhagim of Avelis, of Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, and we work on fixing the pagam and the shortcomings that they may have had in lo nagu kavod zeh lezeh, and many Mefarshim like the Marsha says this. Also Rabbi Gerko, the Rav Stoughton, says that it was some sort of a pagam in the Torah of one's friend, and not having a proper appreciation for the Torah of one's friend. So it's true we think about Rabbi Akiva and the Avelis, but on the main point we have in our minds, Rav Chaim Mintz says, is that we're the tshuka and the desire and the yearning that we're counting up to Kabbalas Torah, to the day that we receive the Torah. That should be our main thought process in our avoda this time of year, is building up our appreciation and our anticipation that we're of this Yom HaNechbad, this appreciation for the Yom HaNechbad, for the honorable day of Kabbalas Torah. And Rabbi Kadwitz mentioned that an appropriate point to work on this time of year is the Memchas Kinyani HaTorah, the 48 ways which the Torah is acquired. That is found in Mishnah Mesachos Avos, Parak Vav, Mishnah Vav, the 48 list of 48 ways. And the Alter from Kelm himself would work on one attribute every day of Sefiras haOmer, and then review all 48 on Erev Shavuos. On Pesach, we were what Rabbi Kanstein calls Toim Tam Cheres. We tasted the Cheres, we tasted what it means to be a free person when we left Mitzrayim. Chazal say, Ein Lacha Ben Chorin Ela Misha Osek B'Salmud Torah. There is no free person aside from the person who's involved in Torah study. I asked Rabbi Binyamin Shulman, our Rosh Yeshiva in Monsey, how come it seems like there's different usages of chorin and being free. So what Rabbi Shulman told me is that really chirus just means to be free, and every person has a different definition of means to be free. Some people, free means that the tax collector is not coming onto them. Some people, free means they're not in prison. Some people, free means that it's 5 o'clock at the end of the workday, they don't have to work anymore. Some people believe free means free to be able to recline on the couch with a beverage and watch something on the screen. So what Chazal are telling us is that these are all ways of being free. These are all ways of being free. However, the truest way of being free on the deepest level is Misha Osek B'Salmud Torah, someone who's involved in Torah study. And this is really what we're building up to for Shavuos. That during Sefiras haOmer we're building ourselves up in such a way and working on ourselves and developing ourselves and giving each other proper respect and working on the ways in which Torah can be acquired. And then we'll become truly free people on Shavuos when we're people who are committed to learning and living the Torah. Ein Lacha Ben Chorin Ela Misha Osek B'Salmud Torah. That's learning the Torah, supporting the Torah. B'ez Hashem will be zocha to be free people. I'd like to give us all a bracha that we should be zocha to count every day to fulfill the mitzvah of Sefiras haOmer. The machlokas of Sefiras haOmer is D'Oraisa or D'Rabbanan, Torah mitzvah or rabbinic mitzvah nowadays. We should be zocha to count every day and to make every day count. We should be zocha to count every day and to make every day count. Build up day by day day 31, 32, 33, more and more in our midos, in our development, in our trukah, in our interest, in our yearning for the great day of Kabbalah Torah. May we all be zocha to count every day and to make every day count.